sequel number 56, and in this particular sequel, Apolo Kaggwa visits Buckingham Palace. King George V, who was not yet crowned, meets him, and then finally Apolo Kaggwa and Hamu attend his coronation at the West Minster Abbey Cathedral. Welcome. The author, Christopher Amos Chikomeko Ntambi. On the 20th of July 1902, that was a Sunday, Apolo Kaggwa had gone to church to pray. And thereafter, he visited the home of Mr. Miller, H.E. Miller, who was a brother of the Reverend Ernest Miller. This was in London. Now, the following day, which was a Monday, the 21st, Apolo Kaggwa and Hamu visited a factory which made biscuits. And the factory employed almost 6,000 workers. Now, this was so overwhelming for Apolo Kaggwa. And he wished for the same in Buganda, which later he realized by the creation of Uganda Company, which also employed a lot of people. Now, on the 22nd of July, they boarded a train to Sheffield to visit Hattersley. Hattersley, that was his birthplace. Now, that gentleman had taught many Baganda natives how to read, write, and numeracy. They were picked from the train station by the Lord Mayor of Sheffield in his two-horse-drawn carriage. The mayor and Apolo Kaggwa sat in one carriage, while the Reverend Ernest Miller sat with Hamu in the other carriage. On the 23rd of July, they visited a factory which made cutlery in the same city of Sheffield and other kitchenware. This same factory made bricks. They also visited the city hall where the Lord Mayor, Mr. Gee Sr., warmly welcomed them and asked them to stand at the hall entrance with him so that each council member would shake their hands. Now, this took almost half an hour. Afterwards, they were given seats on the front row in the town hall, and the Lord Mayor introduced them to the house. They traveled by train on the 25th of July for a distance of about 21 miles with Mr. Taylor to St. Helen to see how glass was made. They were shown the sand, the charcoal, the limestone smelting in a furnace at a very high temperature. Now, on the 26th of July, they went to Crewe, where train cabins were made. They saw some engines which were completed and some that were still undergoing the manufacturing process. Now, this factory employed close to 7,500 native workers. This was another huge employer, which again surprised Apolo Kaggwa, and he made up his mind that when he returns to Uganda, a similar thing would be made, and that was, of course, what later became Uganda Company. They were given a ride in one of the cabins, and which had been completed. And after that tour, they returned to London. On the 5th of August, Apolo Kaggwa and Hamu went to visit Sir Harry Johnson, the Special Commissioner of Uganda, the one who signed the 1900 agreement, who was in London too. Now, their tour guide was Captain Herbert, who had been in Budu before, and who the natives had nicknamed the Party. So during dinner, the host, Sir Harry Johnson, told them that the coronation preparations were in high gear. They then went back to the West Minster Palace Hotel. On the 6th of August, Apolo and Hamu went to see the changing of the guard at the Buckingham Palace. Who wouldn't, especially when you visit London? From then up to this very day, who wouldn't? wished to go to see that particular ceremony. So Sir Apolo Kaggwa and Hamu Mukasa had their turn on the 6th of August, 1902. Now, on the 7th of August, they went by train to the Windsor Castle to see what the British monarch's other palaces looked like. And of course, this was the Amasiro ga Bungereza. So Windsor was regarded as one of the finest towns in England because it was quiet and it was situated on a hill. They were honored to meet Ras Makonnen, a prince from Abyssinia, Ethiopia. He was also touring Windsor Castle, and he was to be the official representative of the Empire of Ethiopia at the coronation. They visited the church where all the English kings were buried now, Ganoge Masiro, the royal tombs, and saw their graves. On the 8th of August, it was a great day in their lives because it was the day they were to meet the new king before coronation day. So Captain Hobart ordered the carriage which Apolo Kaggwa and Hamu Mukasa boarded to the Buckingham Palace. At the palace, they witnessed a spectacle full of honor, respect, and dignity. When they entered the palace, they saw many huge doors, according to them, with attendants who would communicate the arrival of the king's guests as they entered each of those huge giant walls and continued directing them to the succeeding huge doors. They subsequently arrived in a very big room in which the future king received them after the announcement of their arrival, having, of course, been announced as guests from Uganda. The king, to be crowned, had a regal stature, and his voice was so strong and deep that it showed authority, and he had a gray beard. He bowed his head 3 times, and the guests, Apolo Kaggwa and Hamu Mukasa, who had also already been trained to do the same, followed suit. Apolo was told to sit down on a golden chair by the king, while both Hamu Mukasa and Captain Hobart remained standing. The future king of England asked the Katikiro whether he loved England, to which he responded that it was a very good and developed country. The future king said that he had read about Uganda. Apolo Kaggwa then thanked him for sending officials to protect Uganda. Remember, Uganda was a protectorate. The future king stood up very straight and bid farewell to all by bowing his head, and his secretary asked them to sign the visitor's book, which Apolo Kaggwa and the rest did. After the royal audience, they linked up with Bishop Tucker and Reverend Ernest Miller, and they visited the Archbishop of Canterbury. Now, on the 9th of August 1902 was the day for the coronation. By 8 o'clock in the morning, Apolo Kaggwa and Hamu Mukasa were ready to be picked to go to West Minster Abbey Cathedral, where the monarchies of England are crowned. This is very important for whoever is listening, because in our future sequels, we are going to see how this particular ceremony, with the ideas of what was happening at such a ceremony, was exactly shifted or exported from England to Buganda. But that will be in future sequels. But listen carefully. The team that went for the coronation was composed of Bishop Tucker, Reverend Ernest Miller, Apolo Kaggwa, and Hamu Mukasa. Each guest had a letter of invitation which would earn him access to a seat. They were taken upstairs on the graded seats which were set up for the coronation. That is where they found Captain Hobart, who took Apolo Kaggwa and Hamu Mukasa to their seats. Apolo Kaggwa's seat was number 197, while that of Hamu Mukasa was seat number 198. They sat, and waited for almost 2 hours before the new king arrived. The clergy entered and got the communion table ready. They carried down the 3 crowns of honor and the 4 golden scepters and a gold cross carried on 4 gold staffs to usher the king in. The choir sang hymns accompanied by the orchestra. The king walked in majestically, sandwiched by 2 bishops, that one of Canterbury on the right and that one of York on his left side. The king's train, and I'm talking about the train like a Yomogore, was carried by the 8 pages, 4 on each side. The Archbishop of Canterbury prayed, and after that prayer, he read a question asking the king whether he would rule in a good way, and he replied in the affirmative. The Bible was brought out for him to make the formal oath. The Archbishop of Canterbury laid the swearing-in part. The king signed in a register showing his readiness to lead his country. Then the king left the chair he was seated on and he went to the throne, where he would be anointed with oil. After that part was completed, a hymn was sung. The king sat down, and the archbishop led the entire congregation in a short prayer, after which a crown was brought on a silken cushion. The archbishop received it, lifted it up, and proclaimed, "This is the man whom we wish to crown as the king of this realm. If any man has anything to say against it, let him speak." As there was no one who responded to this, he then went ahead and raised the crown ready to put on the head of the new king. At this moment, each of the peers raised their own coronas, and when the crown rested on the head of the king, they all put on their own coronets and cheered with a very loud voice. Electric lights were turned on, the pipe wicks organ played, violins played, the flutes played, the bangos and the English drums all were sounded, and songs were sung. It was a marvelous occasion, which Apolo Kaggwa, Hamu, and the others attended. That was the official reason for Apolo Kaggwa going to England. But as we know, things under the table were happening, as we shall see in tomorrow's sequel. May the good Lord bless us all.